math practice or looking at the lens of what they're understanding. And so it wouldn't be about having a certain assessment that's going to be like the golden ticket. It'll be about finding ways to look at assessments that are there, right? And how you look at student work. You might give them all a piece of a problem or two to work on that you want the information from, but what are you looking for? How do you assess it, right? How do you take observational notes? What do you do with them? You can't take notes on 30 kids in a day, okay? But you can pick 5 kids a week, you know, or 6 kids a week and take a lot of sort of notes of how they're doing and then add more kids the next week or so. It's not so much about having a certain assessment. It's finding ways to really, A, decide what you want to find, and using that to make a plan for how you deal with the observational notes. What do you look at on some of these problems you're having them do? How do you look at student work? I think that would be the direction to go, more so than looking for something that's going to give you some kind of metric. And so that would be my suggestion. And so while there are some quizzes and some tests and investigations, almost everything, like the checklist, there's checklists on content. So you can see where they are in content. There's checklists for math practices. You can see how they're doing with math practices. So you can take really great anecdotal evidence, you know, that's there, that's written down, right? Because if you don't write it down, it didn't happen, okay? You can't really use it unless you write it down. Otherwise, it disappears, right? And so there's opportunities there, but you just have to be really strategic about what you're looking for and where you can start, would be my suggestion.
I was going to actually suggest that as well, because I know Ravenswood Elementary Unified School District had the same exact question. The principals really want to know how are we tracking the data and know exactly where the kids are mathematically. And there isn't a checklist in the, correct me if I'm
Investigations
wrong.
has a ton of content
and in the assessment booklet, there's a checklist
and math practices.
Kind of like, you know, your writer's workshop where you can go around and conference with students. You can do that with kind of like your math setting and look at a specific concept and then go and take notes as to whether or not they've got it or they need more support. So that might be something we can look at.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me because it would help with teachers as they're designing these lessons and thinking about what should I be looking for. The answer to that, you know, reveals to them their teaching points for the class. And so I think that's really important. And the other thing I know from having worked with this type of mathematics instruction is that you have kids who during various strands excel and then don't excel. And so it's, you know, just you know, like our CAS test, which was our state test. It's not going to tell you, it doesn't distinguish, it doesn't give you enough fine information. You know, you might have a level, they're proficient or they're not proficient, but it doesn't give you a fine enough lens into, you know, well, is this kid great at arithmetic problems but not good at area and perimeter problems?
Can I address that real quick too? I don't mean to interrupt. If you look at the latest math research on how kids learn math or how people learn math, a lot of the number sense concepts, like a half is bigger than a third, right? Even though 2 is smaller than 3. You could tell that to a kindergartner every day of the year, and they still won't get it. They're not ready developmentally for that, right? A lot of the number sense concepts, it takes a developmental stage for them to arrive at. However, geometry, spatial awareness, it's literally just practice. There's no developmental stage they have to be at, okay? So if they're having trouble with spatial and geometry, they need more practice with it, and that's the solution. I recently had a brain injury, okay? And I had a skull fracture and a brain hemorrhage, and I was in ICU, and it's a whole big thing, okay? But my brain had to heal. One of the things they had me do to make my brain heal was little games that had to do with spatial awareness, because it's just practice, okay? You know, where they take a figure and then they turn it, and I have to count the cubes, and then, you know, all those awful things that drive me crazy. But so it depends, right? So if they're struggling with something that's spatial or geometric, they just let kids play with blocks, right? They just need that practice. If it's something that's more of a number sense thing, that could be more of a developmental stage as well.
That's why we need to.
Yeah.
That's why they need like playtime in TK.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sure.
my kids have, it's so interesting because like my kids have gone, like they're doing magnet play right now because it's science and whatever. I had one little kid, he was going, magnets attract, magnets repel, magnets attract, magnets repel, because I had just introduced that concept. He was doing it on his own.
You
And
saw
so,
I had trouble with it today, actually, right?
but like he doesn't fully understand the concept that it's, you know, the negative and the positive. Blah, blah, blah. That's not going there yet. You know, that's not where they need to be. But he just knew, oh, it sticks, it attracts. Oh, it doesn't want to. It's repelling itself. You know, like. So they got that concept, and that's where they need to be. But he sat there and played for like 15 minutes, like repel, attract, repel. It was really cute. Like he just sat there and did it. And then his dad was like, I was like, tell Daddy what you learned with the magnets. And he was like, where'd you get that from? And I was like, he's like, good job, teacher. It was just cute, you know?
And what's interesting, too, is a lot of the things with ELA, they give you a reading level, right? They take a little test, they give you right away this metric that you could use. There's no, like, math level, you know, because there's so many different things in math, you know? So you just have to be really strategic about what do I want, and let me develop a plan for how I can get that information. Yeah, I think.
There was a piece of this that actually kind of reminds me of part of the discussion we just had in a secondary math issue. There was a math issue where there was a student petition that was criticizing the Silverado math department. And that went all viral on online petitions. You guys might recall that over the summer. And so one of my chores was to pick that apart and see what are the issues, if any, there that need to be addressed. And we ran into what was actually a pretty big chunk of the explanation there was a kind of a clash between how kids learn and how kids are assessed. And you know, I'm gonna draw a quick picture.
But yeah, feel free to erase whatever, like.
Well, I'll just go up here, but one of the things that I think we're used to traditionally is, you know, you study something, you do a whole bunch of it, you do a whole bunch of practice, and then you give a test. And then the kids pass it, and then you move on and you do a whole something else and you give a test, and the kids pass it and move on. And you get to the end of the year here, and if you give a final that has this, it might not be that high anymore. It might. We've all heard that. Gosh, it's been so long, you know, since we did this. And it has a lot of feel-good moments in it, because kids tend to quiz at the point when they're high, and then they learn. You know, it's the old I learned it for the test, and I got the A, so now I'm ready to move on. And that was what we were hearing from the students that they wanted more of at the high school. Loud and clear, they wanted more of that. And the research is telling us just the opposite. That if you spiral instruction all through the year and revisit and look at the same concepts from different angles all the time, that you make those connections, the first time you test, and the second time you test, and the third time you test, and by the time you get to the end of the year, now you're at the peak of knowing it. The problem is there weren't very many feel-good moments along the way. And so there was a lot of complaints about grades. Almost all of the complaints in the petition were about grades and whether or not they were getting points for something. It wasn't about whether or not they learned something. And so when we looked at the achievement data, it was actually very ironic. If you take all the different grades in the district and you take all the different things that we test and you look at which group has the highest growth, demonstrated growth during the year, it was the Silverado Math Department. So we were able to show them that and say, you know, yeah, you know, that well, hopefully we won't get petitions on everything else now, but you know, that was, it's part of them. I think the piece here is understanding what assessment is, understanding how kids learn, understanding how revisiting, and that this type of learning results in long time mastery, not just the short term, I can take a quiz, right? That's one piece. I think the other thing is go ahead and let your kids in on that, because if they're feeling like they're not getting it, that frustration level can affect how they're doing along the way. But if they understand what's going on and that they're kind of filling that gradually, and now they're able to use it in more connections, more applications, then I think there's some feel-good moments in that. Right?
Glenn, I have to say that we see this when we're using our Lexia for reading.
Great.
And we would like to see that in math. If there was a Lexia version, Pearson, for math.
I don't know. Like,
well, there you go.
I don't know.
Just saying.
Product development right there.
Well, but because I taught in that math program, and what I can tell you about the design of the tests, because they weren't pre-made. There was a test bank teachers can draw from. But the pedagogy behind that is, as you design every one of those quizzes, you make sure that 2/3 to 3/4 of the material is reviewed. And only a third
Always spiraling
to a
back.
quarter of
That's
the
a
material
major.
is new. And the reason is because there are those kids who, bam, you teach it, they got it. But there's all those kids who need to do it again and again, and then eventually, I get it. And so by constantly rebuilding and revisiting concepts into the quizzes itself, you get that practice and you give them that opportunity to demonstrate somewhere else along the line what they know. You know, and it's a very, math has the affordance of being able to do that. I remember once, I used to be the union president in this district for a long time, and I had a parent call me and say, my kid flunked the photosynthesis chapter and now we're on to, you know, some other science concept, and when is he going to get to take the photosynthesis test over? The answer is never, right? They're not reteaching photosynthesis. They've got units all the way through and it's not coming back. But math is not like that, you know, and I think the disservice that's happened over time is that we've thought of math as being distinct things. Addition is different than you know, fractions, and that's different than area, and the reality is, no, it's not.
And what I used to do, because I also taught high school for kids who had failed algebra. I did the exact same thing, actually. And I would tell them, look, I want you to master this stuff by the end of the semester. That's when you're taking that final, and that's when you have to master it by. So I actually let them retake tests. And, you know, it would be the same standards. I use exam view a lot. I'd press a couple buttons, it'd be all different problems, but the same standards, you know? And I let them retake it as much as they wanted. I just kept the highest score they got. And it was easy for me to do. And it motivated them. Because I knew that if they didn't get it the first time, they could practice and prep and take it again, Because I said, I don't care if you know this in September. You need to know it by the end of January, right? So if you don't get it in September, like, I ain't mad, right? Here's more opportunities for you to master this. I'm not saying that's always the best idea, but it's what I did to try to motivate kids. And it worked, and it was very easy. I just pressed a different button, it changed numbers and problems, and I printed it out, you know? So it wasn't a lot of work on my part. But it definitely motivated them.
They do have a program called Splash Math, and that's something that I've heard works really well, but it's something the district doesn't have to pay for.
We went to the last year for like the last 2-3 months of school.
Yeah, you can
it is amazing.
do a free thing, but when I went to the Lexia training, they actually said that Splash Math was a good one too. It's kind of the equivalent of it. So, and it literally breaks down all of the, like, there's 45 kinder skills, there's 70 first grade skills, like, it breaks it down for you all the way to 5th grade.
Our school has it.
Use it, you love it.
Yeah.
I know, right? Just saying.
It's really good, actually.
Yeah,
Really,
I know
I
that.
just loved it.
But you can do like a free month, I think.
It helps with pacing. Things
I
like that
also
help
think,
with
you
pacing.
know,
Students who
I
move
think
on.
we have to keep our focus on what are the pedagogical strategies we're going to keep pushing in our classrooms so that these habits of mathematical understanding develop. And it's one of the reasons that I was really happy with the group of teachers who worked so hard on piloting, you know, a couple choices. And, you know, the bottom line was, it came down to, do we want a student-centered approach or do we want a teacher-centered approach? And the teachers in this district chose a student-centered approach. I am old enough to have been through this battle more than once, and I have seen us throw away student-centered approaches because it's daunting as a teacher to teach, especially if you're not a math geek and love thinking about, why do I factor in
Right.
3rd grade, and you know, who's ever going to use this,
Right.
And you know, and you hear math in particular gets the, I don't know why we teach this, right? I remember having a sub come into my class and who came in to an algebra class and said, I haven't used algebra in 40 years. And my kids, of course, reported that to me the moment I walked in the door. And I said, that man retired last year. I said, you honestly don't think he had to use some math to know whether or not he's gonna have enough money to live on the rest of his life? I said, that's a math problem, figure it out.
Well, even like making a cake, something simple that the kids can understand.
Right.
You have to measure stuff.
But
you
they
can't just throw
hear
the bowl.
this everywhere.
Yeah.
If you
But-
watch a television show that math is on, it's a problem in math. It's not, they're never having joy in the math.
And can I address that too? Because, of course, teaching high school, I dealt with this all the time. And I said, you know what? 80% of what we do in here, you're not going to do outside, okay? However, this is not a math class. This is a class in success training. Math is the vehicle. You're going to learn to self-teach, to think and figure things out, to be creative, to problem solve, to make decisions. And these are skills you're going to learn confidence, and these are skills you're going to take to every other class you have. And that's what you're doing. This is a class in success training. Math is just the vehicle, And so, yeah, you know what? You're not going to go outside and factor a trinomial. You're just not, okay? Believe me, you're not. And so, but you are going to learn to think for yourself, and that you're taking with you, And that's how I started the year. And it had a great benefit because they saw, okay, I'm learning to be able to be successful. And I'm taking these, I listed like 5 skills that was part of success training that are taking with them, right? Self-teaching, think and figure things out, being creative, all of them, right? And they had the mindset of, I'm learning to be successful. I'm learning to be successful. It's not about whether I'm going to go outside and deal with an infinite series, And it.
What was one to observe? We have tons of resources through Silicon Valley when they talk about it. And there's also a lot of resources some of my teachers have been using from the CAST released questions. And so, and so they were using, like last year, and one of my teachers pulled me in because there was a question where kids got an answer. It wasn't the answer the state said was the answer. She couldn't figure out how to get the state's answer. And she did know how the kids got their answer. She called them to the and so we ended up having this great conversation. That's what they're stressed about. We said to them, based on the amount of information you've given, your answer is entirely reasonable.
So what do we want to see? What do we want to
Let's see if we can figure out this possibilities.
Like what grade level?
So we spent the rest of that hour trying different things, doing, of course, obsessive compulsive. Okay. And I was a math major at Cal Poly. It was like, okay, I'm doing this problem. I think their answer is right. I'm trying to eliminate. Is there anything I haven't thought about? So she, wanted to download the problem and look at it. And the teacher's husband. So we had this 4-way conversation going on between my sister-in-law, myself, her husband, and at the end we determined that it was not possible that the state was wrong, and the reason I released the question was because the answer was wrong. And so when we came back, I came back to the kids and I said, I want to talk to you about it. And I showed them the emails from, because we were texting back and forth. My sister-in-law had asked, what's a zero in the term? She told me about something that was here. And I was going, what's that? Oh, it's like, that's the term. And it starts you at 0, on my graph. So I had this wonderful experience with people who genuinely engaged in the question.
Upper one, lower for what?
Mathematics, they knew to figure it out.
I think that
They felt powerful because they got the right answer first.
We should watch a reading. But it makes you question it.
But the amount of dialogue that went on and the amount of math kids did
the problem is that
trying to prove that their answer was the only possible.
It's going to be different this year. We have a whole new
Really a valuable experience. And it also highlighted the nature.
She has the point is, I was putting my kids here and then they go into first grade here. That's where my problem was. Because even some of my kids, I'm trying to do something stuff, whatever. But
the power of their reasoning when you gave them questions that's beyond. So you're not going to really start to see.
They're just
How do we
just
I don't know.
how excited someone.
my input on that would be give them this year. Okay? Because they're formulating.
You know, in the process, they were working with me on, okay, so how do we categorize what we know?
She doesn't have a lot, yeah.
We keep asking.
And you're raising questions.
Sort of like when you do guess and check.
They're still having kids that are here, yeah. You're there for a while. No,
Versus when you help them think about, okay, so have a guess, doesn't work, is it too high or too low? Right, so where should we go next? And then invariably you have a kid who guesses
But,
higher.
so what do we want to watch? Like, with the reading number?
So this is why we write it down. If you just keep guessing, you don't write it
An upper and a lower on that one too, so now it's 6 times.
Maybe just to everybody.
Yeah, I think, you know, we could definitely put together what are, you know, because one of the advantages we have right now is there are critical standards. So unlike language arts, there's a million standards and how many.
Teachers over to me yesterday, I think it was yesterday, and I was like, hi. Or maybe it was
Math
Monday, I was like,
is specific about what are the most important.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we really started
She like stayed there for a while and watched them. Okay. Yeah. That's what I said.
what questions are they asking and what
So then who do we want to go and see though too? Because do we have to
just having a dialogue.
do they have to be okay with it?
Or title
You just tell the whole staff, hey, this is exactly what I'm
you know, it could even be an online.
At least that's what I was asking.
I think that's it. Because then
If you tell them they're coming over, I'm telling them they're not.
what if I say, but what if I say, hey, like, okay, hey, Terry, we're gonna come and watch you sometime in this week during your math, and I know when we sat in a room, that way it's not a specific day, because like, stuff happens though too, like, you know what I mean, like yesterday when we had the assembly, and then threw everything off, and then I had library, and then, I mean, yesterday there was not a little like, it was just rough, because then, you know, whatever, and like, right now, I'm trying to get them to understand what science is, so we've been watching a lot of Sydney Science kids, and then like, we're gonna go to the lab and try that, so we're making a list of what we're gonna do, you know what I mean, so, right now we're doing the 5 senses, and we're like, okay, this is the 5 senses, or whatever, so I don't want you to come in and watch me freaking watch the Sydney Science kid.
But like last year when
Wait, and I don't think that does
everyone in the teachers changed.
well, yeah, and I understand that you do an MHUSD, but for me, I mean, if I decide that on a, you know, on a, like I said, on a random day, I have one of these, they come in a lot, maybe that's just fucking forever.
To know what day they're coming.
No, but what I'm saying is, I throw my lesson plan back in the books.
We don't think about that.
Yeah, I think we should give them a heads up.
How many words do kids just sit to learn and they don't? So we're not going to be able to see everybody else come from families whose parents grew up in this program.
See, that's how I am too.
United States is the only
Because like,
we were all raised sort of a mirror. Yeah, it's during their
is it only 30 minutes?
No, I'm sorry. That's the way I would do it.
Because, I mean, Terry had to get a hold of stuff.
background,
Yes.
and they're afraid to tell
Because you go to multiple classes.
their kids will say, that's not how we teach us.
Okay, so like I would spend 20 minutes in blocks, or 20 minutes in, you know, item, you know.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
like
I
my
agree.
5-year-old from kinder, first, second, third, 20 minutes. And you stop reading.
I mean, is that what we're supposed to do? Like, is that 100%? Like, nobody
No,
knows like
that's what happened.
Are you going tomorrow?
Or I'm not, that would be interesting to know. One is Spanish, the other is maybe there is, but I'm not really sure hear it.
So why don't we just,
same day?
why don't we, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I know Glenn would love that question.
See, it's not, that's what those were.
So you usually just do it Friday.
Well, that's what they're doing. They're going to Zach's gonna go,
Because otherwise,
like they have these different times.
so everyone's hoping that.
And honestly, I remember years and years ago when Sandy Devlin was the math mentor for elementary, she actually sat down and she ran a cadre of teachers who did exactly what you figured out. That is what we want kids to know, and therefore how should we use materials. So we didn't start on page one. Vast majority of the students she had learned all the way through. So sad. Here was this well,
and that's the thing. They've already got the list. You're being observed right on this day. You're going to be an observer on that day.
it's tough because at elementary, our preparation to teach elementary, the preparation for math.
So let's set that right now then.
So look at
What are we
she's
looking
doing is
for?
So look at first trimester she's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Then her second trimester this group, and then third trimester this group. And so when it says on there,
And I think,
telling them how they're doing it out.
but then again, where's their resource?
You.
I would always call. I mean, I talked to a parent today who's homeschooling her kid. What they're doing out of it.
Yeah. I just don't, like you said, I don't wanna go in and then have somebody be all like pissy that I have to go to third term and be yelled at. I'm not.
But yeah, it's not what it's about.
I know that's not what it's about.
We do know that's what happens.
That's what's gonna happen. I already feel it like a bummer.
It's not very it's a great job to say, oh my God, that he was listening. So bad. I don't know if I should go back to
I had some of those already this year.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing this again tomorrow.
Let's change that. We don't have to say like
Oh, go to,
Yeah, I get it.
there are teachers at every site that are ready to have these nice kids and be a part of, have their developing and mastering what we need to be doing.
I think it would be
We're all disparate, which is why we don't want to just
Yeah.
start this learning. It has to be a full.
You can do it without me if you want.
People.
I'll figure it
I'll
out
call
because.
Okay. Primary focus for it is attendance and ELA, and math was like a lot.
You want to do PM?
But now that we have teachers
Let's do an AM, PM, but we have to make sure their schedules. Because our bell schedules, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, but how times do we have these up?
And my teachers are really cool too. They kept saying, when's the other book coming?
That's it. So we're not gonna watch everybody, you're gonna say that everyone else is gonna watch everybody else.
It's going to work. I was happy when we just went to, is it math or was it?
It was engaged.
I loved what I saw.
It was so it was very so that's why we had to rewrite the assessments because we went, but now we have the opposite.
And
So other teachers are, it's not just the grades that's going to watch.
I'm out of my room right now, I don't know how to do this, what does this mean?
So we'll take this, and that's also maybe 5 or 6 steps. With you, it's not just letting you know we don't have to stop.
Let's look at what they have, and let's look at what we want to know. What would we have to ask the kids to show us? Okay.
So what if we have, like, let's do that, so they're going in to watch one teacher in math,
They're looking at their.
and then another teacher at a different grade level, like a lower grade, do class.
Aware of grade level you are. But we could.
So that's a half day stuff for them, and then in the afternoon, sort of the lower grades do the same
How the
thing.
units are in the order. I mean, that'd be an interesting question.
Lower grade or seeing upper grade.
For class, but then seeing their own.
You know, what is their thinking in terms of? Hey, Brett.
Yeah.
So we've been talking more about trying to know what kids need to know. Like I said, we at elementary.
Honestly, I do math whenever I can because
So, like, what teachers really wanted to, we're all confident that my kids have mastered their standards. Right.
you know.
How did they look at the way the text is set up in terms of units to do some backwards planning? What are the essential standards that I would need to know by the first trimester, the second trimester, the third trimester?
I think I'll know about how they break that out. I know by unit, you can certainly go to the first unit and see what the standards are, what the focus is, and what that's about. But I don't know if any development of anything beyond just like we're going to do the first unit and the second unit. Like I don't think they ever thought about semesters or trimesters.
So, but when they thought about the units, was there a purpose to why the first unit was first? You know, because for example, in the old books, the non-investigations, it's just all review. And so as a teacher, I never taught the first page that way because I didn't know.
Right.
Had a staff meeting.
So I always found the stats here, and she doesn't know what stats because
They never got to. It was
never
yeah.
seen it. They'll have to rely on me. They won't think they're in the
And
wrong.
so if what happens if
Let's
we're on
not
the
do
same
it that way.
it doesn't have a day on it. That's what I'm trying to say.
We can send them, I can send them again.
We're gonna have to, that's what I'm trying to say, because, I mean, we're gonna have, 6 times 4, we're gonna have 24 teachers out and about. That's what I'm trying to say, we don't have 24 staff.
But we can coordinate that.
So I guess what we would have to do is let's try out what are the essential standards for your grade, and then think about how which units apply to which standards, and then think about in what order do we want to do that, and
Is
then
conference meetings.
and what do we want to know, show us.
So we would be coming up with our own tasting.
Yeah, that's what we yeah, we're gonna have to do that. There's nothing that we have for you where we're at. Other than just
No, that's okay.
No, that's a good starting point, because at least we know not to go within, trying to find the rationale.
yeah, I would never think through.
So there's,
Yeah. There is, if you go to mypearsontraining.com, and it's a free site when you sign up, you get real-time chat and email support about any program. So that might be a question that someone might be able to answer.
Free at TK
The
1,
person who's
2,
talking
3,
to
4.
the chat,
How many first graders?
Right.
Three.
they might be able to,
Somebody's
they
like
might be able to get back to you.
3.
So that
And
would be
then,
my
so that's 10.
guess. But I obviously, I work
So
with
then
that
there's
development.
Sarah,
I do a lot of
and
work
then
with
2 for
Taco
third grade.
Bus, and they still
I'm
do.
not counting Crystal. That lady's a hot mess and she's been coming up 30 multiple times.
So what is it, MyPearson?
Training.com. And so if you go to mypersontraining.com, you can sign up for free. And once you sign up for free, you can get full time at 24. And you just click on product,
So
and
how many
find the
fourth graders
product,
do we have?
and it's out.
3.
If you don't sign up,
Three,
you
and
still
then
look at the
technically 3.
information on the product, but you
Sarah's
can't
third
get
grade,
it.
the combo. So
Yeah,
I'm
every
gonna
time
turn
her
yeah.
grade
And then how many
That
fifth
would be
grades
my
do you
best.
have? 2.
That would
What
be
am
my
I
best
missing?
guess. What I'll do, here, let me give you my email
20.
address.
Do you want to?
I'm gonna write in front of you, ask. So, what I'll ask from you
Yeah, you think that should remind you to ask?
Well, I'm gonna ask, but give you at least know where to get back to me. But I'll definitely ask and find out.
Okay.
Just give me a quick note.
Oh, because Kate, sorry.
That's an at. I'm sorry.
I got it. I know it.
It's like an E, but it's not an E.
All right, I'm gonna go to the meeting.
I don't know.
I was just writing it down.
Thank you all for
But
coming.
yeah, thank you very much. I
Oh, of
really
course, absolutely, nice to meet you.
I appreciate
I
coming
heard
here.
fabulous things about you.
Uh-oh. See, that's pressure.
Never.
And then we have, like, you know, these upper grade teachers and then these lower grade teachers. So you get an AM and a PM club or whatever. And then the AM times overlap, so it's nice to be the same. I seriously need to stop myself from doing it. I have to do emergency
We're trying. It's a great plan.
got So they told her that she was starting on Monday. They told her she would bought stuff for it, she would prep stuff for it. She went and then in on Monday and they said, oh no, the guy's gonna take the driving stuff. And then we're not sure. You can stay for this day, but then I don't know if people will. Yeah. I like like even by the end of first grade. Oh. And then the first one, like, they have at Walsh. I love them. That totally sad. That's not even. Yeah, so but she because she's got like a weird I told her, unless you work in writing, don't do it.
I have no problem with criminals. That's not the issue.
What are you doing there, Jeff?
Okay.
So if the three of us are doing this every single time, then we have to do it in October, January. And report back. Or just yeah, it's supposed to be, and I wouldn't ask
I do glad. I don't do glad 100%, but I do glad. Amy does not do glad. Terry does mild glad. She did glad last year.
Sarah shopping, isn't it?
Yeah. Right? You're fabulous. We can go, but we can do that twice because they're different teachers. No. You hear what I said? Oh, we can put Sean on this one and Sarah on that one. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's messed up.
I know, it totally is. I'm just being a brat. But
We could do
it's different.
We can bring them together in class, and we can have some of it. I remember talking to her like, she's a person about to if not, like it's like more important.
Yeah, she told her. I mean, I can only do so much glad because the kids don't get it, but when I do certain lessons, I glad it out. Get more.
Yeah.
So these are the
Which was there, but it was.
It was today.
And then I had no idea that.
Well, if you look at our schedule, it says please do not share.
I'll send
Yeah, she will put it on our website. You see the map on this? 11:45 to 1:15, and then 1:45. And she,
Although there's some.
because it says whole class bathroom break worked out amongst teachers for half an hour. But a teacher doesn't get to go pee.
I don't think that's I don't think that's.
You need to talk to her. No. I didn't give it to Lisa.
I saw that, but I was done. And you have
I right now have I have a 40 minutes. Yeah, well, there's 40, 45, 55, and I 45, 40. I might do that.
I just talked to Wednesdays.
I've never heard that before.
Usually they like are confused on how to do it.
What to do, pretty? Yeah, I agree. Because I think I also feel that it's really daunting in our school and high class to have 40 people.
That sounds like her.
Oh, no, can we do a math and a glad and then a glad and a math? Sorry, that's really cool.
Yeah, but then like, I think just the three of them.
Some of us had 30 minutes on. Some of us can't pee for 3.5 hours, which is not healthy. And, can you highlight that? Because she asked me. I think there's a rule about having to go to the bathroom. No, there's really not. Yeah, I got no duty. I can't go to pee. And the minutes. My duty cannot go free. My duty needs to depend. Yeah, I think. Probably should. Well, but see, like, I don't do reading groups. Kinder's not going to be doing like they're doing KC5. And I'm doing my reading groups.
With one and without one, a way different type. She was reading.
Maybe we need to have a powwow with like at other schools. Okay. Because I know Alice wants to take time to come and watch me check to see how my littles go. That's what her rule is, but whether or not she does. I've decided to go see Alice's class.
That was me last year. I was like, and then I came this year and I was like, hey, even with what I'm doing, some years are like
my whole thing is here's but here's my thing, do we want to go and observe what they should be learning in first grade? So that, like, okay, here's, like, that's what I was trying to say before, was like, my kids will go here, but then they were still using the same materials that I was, they weren't going to here, and then they weren't getting ready for here, so then when they were supposed to be here, they're supposed to be here. So you want and then fifth grade can just go see someone else and one up and one down. So I know where that's fifth grade can go up, but they can go to someone else. They need to see what either go to another fifth grade or go see what minutes. Or just see what we're doing and say, oh, okay, well, we didn't know you guys were doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have no idea what you teach in fifth grade. I could care, honestly, I couldn't understand anything anyway. I didn't fifth grade well. Like, I probably wouldn't have any comprehension of what fifth grade was like. So it would be interesting for me to be like, oh, we do those same types of strategies, even in TK.
Or do we just say
I don't think
a little bit of everybody? Do we just take a little bit of everybody?
To you, Nancy, smiley face, and then I went, oh my gosh, how do you respond to that? But then I guess she reflected on it, and then she wrote back, no pressures if you're comfortable to the best way you can. I think that's
Right.
So we should talk to our fearless leader and say we need to have a power for all those teachers for like a 10 minutes a meeting and say we're going to be coming in and doing instructional rounds. We're working out the hiccups right now, but it will be 7 of us going into multiple classrooms and then switching. That's a great question.
I'll present it, and I will
And then she'll be like this.
So you can do what you think she was confident with it.
Anyway.
Because I feel like we all need to know that we're all going to do this. I don't want to throw, like, if they were I don't want to just have you guys, like, 6 of you walking in and being like, you know, and I'm yelling at my kids and that. No, I'm just saying, but that's what I'm saying. We need to discuss it and make sure that everybody's aware of it, not just like go and talk to hey, Jeff, we're going to observe you on this day. I think everybody should be observed on this day. See what I'm saying? Just so I know that, and then eventually you're going to come to me. Just so I know who's going down.
This is happening to everybody.
Yeah.
One of us will have this.
So that I don't feel like I'm being bombarded and singled out. Because like I've already, like when I mentioned it to my son, I said, no, do not come in. Danielle's like, you can come in. I know, I'm well aware of that. But I'm just saying, Danielle's already like, don't come in and observe me, I don't want to be judged. But we're going to. So it's not about you. But that's what we need to present. Exactly. It's about the lesson. And it has nothing to do with you. You want to have a sub on that day, as long as the lesson's being taught, I don't care. Good luck finding a substitute. I'm taking 7 people out of the room. Right? So, you know, I'm just saying, I think we need to present it that way because I don't want to be like, they always watch me, you know, like, Well, that happens to me all the time. Like I said, we're inviting a 5th grade classroom. She always comes to watch TK and shows me how fun the TK kids are. But your kid's 30. I don't know why you're watching TK. But see what I'm saying? Like, so I constantly have it. No, she'll tell me kids. She's like, everybody, the little kids are cute. La abuelita está bien, bien.
Hone down focus on the specifics that we should look for in math, right? Right? In math. Then I can say, are we going to observe math? There, is that good? Are you sure?
Oh yeah. But like, I mean, I don't want to come in.
I don't want to.
And so I'm like, but what I'm saying is,
I'm talking to you. If we don't want to, she's going to say, oh, you're in.
that's right.
Oh,
that was right. And like my niece was I can't even decide what this means. I can't even
This is like a debate. I'm sorry.
Like I went to the house and I was like,
if you want to check, they're the ones who do your evals and sign your paychecks.
it's for both
It's designed to be an
No, I don't.
It is, right? The research is designed to
I think we should stay on our campus.
Okay, but I've worked with plenty of districts.
The fact of the matter is, we need to basically.
I tell them, but you have a reason to. Right, so it's different, right? I can tell you that they suggested doing the order. Right, right. That's my first thought. My second thought is because you have access.
Well, you know what I would really would be awesome? You don't think it's field training. Same as glad
It's not problem. But it's still not like we think that it's like traditional math. So you might see
No, I like
there's no, I wish I could tell you there's a correlation between this investigation and solution topics. There is one. Here's what it is. They're developing so, there's no assessment that I know. See if there's something